Hey, welcome to Champions in the Marketplace. So glad you're joining us tonight. Pastor Mark was not able to be on tonight, so he asked me to cover for him. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I've been on every week watching as we've had Champions in the Marketplace, and been excited to see all the business people on. Mark's interviewed George Reese and Gabe and Albert Mello, had guys on like Philip Libator, who was an accountant, and Dominic Russo from Missions Bean, and Bob Harrison. But tonight I'm excited because we have a counselor on, marriage and family counselor, Gary Gendron, and so he'll be on in a moment. But I want to start by just saying, if you need any desire for prayer, we would love to be praying for you. And you can text at any time throughout this broadcast. You can text at any time, 760-404-0817. And we would love to spend time praying for you. But we want to be a support to our business community at Champion Life Church. And we're excited to see all that God is doing. And but I'm going to bring Gary on. And Gary, are you there? Ready to come on? There you are.
I made it.
And you made it. You're looking good. And we color coordinated. We're both in blue. And thank you for doing this. And Gary, you're a marriage and family therapist, but you didn't start out there. You started out in your career was in as a chief of police. And at some level, you got involved in some politics. Tell us a little bit what sets you up for what you're doing today.
Well, I didn't start off as a police chief. I actually started off as a records clerk right out of high school, and was a dispatcher. And then in my early 20s was hired in Palm Springs as a police officer. Then I've done 34 years. I've done just about every aspect of police work, up into supervision and including being the police chief. And then I was on the Palm Springs Unified School Board for about 8 years, I believe it was.
Wow.
8. And dabbled in politics. And then the question always comes up is that how are you a licensed marriage family therapist with a background of being a police officer and ultimately as a police chief? And it's kind of an interesting dynamic because I actually never thought I'd get all the way through law enforcement without getting hurt. Most of my peers would get back injuries, knees blown out. And I figured if I got injured, I still wanted to be helping. And I thought, well, I'll become a therapist and work with child abuse victims, children.
Okay.
And I thought I'll work with kids. And I have a fondness for trying to help develop, adolescents. And then I thought, well, I can understand what they're going through with crime as if they're victims of abuse. And then I can also help them on the other side with my therapy. So I thought that would be a good mix. So I started off with all my education is in psychology. And I have an AA degree from COD, College of the Desert, bachelor's from Cal State San Bernardino, and ultimately my master's degree from Chapman, which is now Brandman out here in the desert. And I've been doing, you have to do 3,000 hours of internship, and it's supervision. And then I did that actually at Southwest Church under supervision by a really good Christian man by the name of Dr. Rodney Dean. So I have a lot of influence from him, and he's since passed on as with the Lord now. But he was such a good man and is such a good therapist, and I like to think a lot of what I do is based on some of his information. And I was involved with National Institute of Marriage, and I worked with some of the most outstanding therapists. So I would sit in and watch really good people and learn from them. And now as a licensed therapist, I have a small practice and try to work with people who are suffering from stress, anxiety, family issues, relationship issues, and addictions. I kind of do it all.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time we met? I remember at Champion Life Church. We were we had a situation where our leadership were trying to navigate through a situation with a member of our church. It was a real difficult thing. We didn't know exactly. It felt like it was a very delicate matter to us, and we wanted to get it right. And I remember, I don't remember who it was, Tammy or Gabe, but one of them said, "Hey, there's this guy, Gary, and I think he's the right guy." And I remember how you impacted our team, and so, do you remember that night?
Oh, I do, and it also helps when you try to navigate through those kind of conflicts, because as a police chief, I had a group of command staff that were not easy. These were strong personalities, police officers, and I longed to have a staff meeting where I had just some yes men and everything worked out right. Yes, and yes women. But no, it was what your meeting was about was really nothing compared to the staff meetings in a police department. So yeah,
Yeah.
although from you guys' perspective, it was pretty tough. For mine, it was, I wish I had this all the time.
Yeah. No, we have what we call a spirit of cooperation.
Yes.
Is everybody really does work to get on the same
Yes.
page, and so that was great. And I know that the reason we have you on tonight is our business people, they're facing a lot in the midst of all this that's going on with the COVID-19 and all the pressures and do I lay off employees or do I keep employees? Do I get the loans? Man, it can put a lot of pressure. And I know as a pastor, I'm getting a lot of calls from them. And I know, that there's been times I've talked to you about situations myself in my life and in pastoring. And you've been a really good voice in my life. And I'm grateful for that, Gary. And I just, as Tammy and I were talking, and as we were talking to Mark, we thought, all the pressures that business people are under right now, as far as we know, you're one of the best voices to speak into that. So thank you for coming on and being willing to do that. So I got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
I get calls from business people, and some of the questions are like, I'm in a no-win situation. They'll be like, I have a decision to make. What the best decision for my business is not necessarily the best decision for these employees. It may be that I need to lay them off, and it's causing a lot of what would I say, pressure.
Stress.
There's stress,
Mm-hmm.
and what would you say to them if they're, because you care about your business obviously, but you care about people, and you feel like there's no win. You feel like there's no good solution here.
Well, I'm a cognitive-based therapist. That is, that the theory that I teach from is that feelings all originate from perspective, internal talk, your outlook, etc. So it's everything originates with a thought, and thoughts, thinkings fuels emotion, and emotion then drives behavior. So a lot of times what happens is people have this automatic thinking. It's quick, and they just start to feel, and they feel anxiety, they feel stress, they feel sadness, they feel anger, they feel those emotions. But what's the fuel is driving all that is this internal talk and outlook. So sometimes I look at some of the absolutes that people say. And the one thing that you were saying is no win, that there is no way to win this. And that to me is an extremely stressful way of looking at it. Instead of saying no win, I would go and challenge that. The second part of this is, first part is identifying your internal talk that is driving this high stress. Then the second part is you challenge it. So if you say no win, that is creating this hopelessness. There's no decision I make that is going to be beneficial to me, the business, or to my employees, or even a benefit in spreading my message as a minister or whatever the business. You're just saying no win. And I always would challenge that. I go, what is a better way of looking at the decisions? And you're looking, and if you really restructure the thinking is, yes, I have a very difficult decision. I'm a smart business person. I've made very good decisions in the past. And what I'll do is right here in this moment, with the information I have, I will make an informed, intelligent, Christian type decision. And then I will go with it. And if it doesn't work, I'll adapt. That takes the stress down. We can't take stress away. But what we do is manage it with our internal talk. And one of the things that as Christians, we always is, especially when we get hung out there and we're doing these things, you have the big gun. You bring Jesus into this. And oftentimes we hit this stress and all we're doing is feeling, and we go, what am I going to hear? And kind of what you're going along is, I can't win this. No matter what I do, it's that there's going to be there is no good decision. Versus there are decisions, they're probably not one that's going to solve all the problems, but you do have a decision, if you really think about it, that is better than the other ones. But if you say, no matter what I do, they all suck. No matter what decision I make, well, that's stressful. Versus giving yourself credit and saying, you know, I'm intelligent, I'm God-centered, I'm going to make the best decision in the interest of my people, my business, and what God would have me do. And then you go in and you make that decision and you go forward, dealing with the stress, managed, dealing with the anxiety, managed. After all, there is no such thing as anger takeaway classes. There's anger management. So, and then you look at it, Jesus felt these, he just managed it. Obviously he's God. And I've had guys look at me and go, yeah, but he's God. I know he's God. He's not going to get this wrong, but he gives you an example as God in this experience, how to manage your feelings. And that's better. So you look at it, you go, you're not going to have a life stress-free, but you're going to have a life that is managed with thinking that is balanced to the circumstances. That was a very, very long answer to a short question.
Yeah, it's a great answer, though. You know, the scripture says, don't worry about anything, pray about everything.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we forget about the praying part and we go straight to the worrying part. And the way we say it around our church is, hey, let's lean into God. And we lean into God by prayer and spending time in prayer. And a lot of times when it feels like there is absolutely no way to win, it's like, that's where God gives you that little voice. The Old Testament says, you'll hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. And, so if you lean into God, you're going to hear that voice. But sometimes dealing with that pressure, and one of the things that I find as a pastor that more and more of our business community are talking to me about is, it starts out as pressure at work. It starts out as pressure in the business. But then if you're not careful, it can so easily transfer into pressure in the marriage because you just simply bring that into the marriage equation. And it's probably very easy to do. So how do you not have that happen, Gary?
Well, what you're pointing out is, you're a great pastor and you're turning into be a really good cognitive therapist, by the way. That's very good. Because what you're saying here is true, is that our minds, our brain, those neurons are made up of associations. One memory, one thought triggers another. For example, with that stress, what happens is you'll trigger, I've got a no-win situation. Life out here, life sucks. I can't get a break. No matter what I do, I'm losing money. The government is difficult to deal with. They make these things so complicated. I can't do it. It's overwhelming. It's just too much. There's a typical kind of one bad association to the other. So what we got to do is you take a breath and you go, okay, let me interrupt that string of thinking, that negative thinking that really is out of balance and not true. So as we said, the first one is, well, yeah, I can make a good decision. I'll make the best decision under the circumstances. Then the second one comes around and you go, well, life does suck, but not 24/7,
Yeah.
And Jesus has never promised me that it was going to be easy. In fact, when I think about it, I'm not a pastor, so it's not my experience, but when I hear, Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, what I get from that is Jesus is telling me Okay, you think it's bad now. Become a
Yeah.
Christian and see what happens. Because
Yeah.
also Christian businessmen have got to look at this and go, they're influential. They're
Right.
usually very known in the community. So they can impact the community. And if the enemy can get in there and get them stressed out, steal their joy, and then they can look at him and say, well, look, that he calls himself a Christian. Look at how he's acting. That is influential in the community. Then if I'm the enemy, I want to get into your marriage. I want to get into
Right.
other aspects to steal that joy and to get you stressed out. So then it impacts, and your marriage is no longer glorifying God. Your business is no longer glorifying. You and your marriage isn't glorified. The enemy can't get you not to believe in Jesus, but he can sure make you less influential and less glorifying. And so I always think of, you got a business, watch for it, that kind of thinking you have does not bleed over into your relationship. Again,
Yeah.
another long answer to a simple question. I
Yeah.
could be a pastor the way I talk.
Yeah, you could be. So Gary, we're talking about marriages here. So you have
Okay.
a spouse, they're running a business. Then when they're under all the pressure that they're under, and then they come home, and let's speak to both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
What should the spouse who is trying to be supportive, how can they be supportive? And then the other side of the equation is when you're coming home, a lot of times I know myself, I'm at the office. I've just did 8 hours of working with messy people stuff. And then I come home, and Tammy, sometimes she's like, hey, tell me about your day. And this is the last thing I want to do is I want to escape from all the people stuff I just went through. Yet she really does want to know what's going on in my life. And so speak to that for a moment.
Okay. So we're gonna go like it's traditional, that it's the man is outside the home and the lady is, but there's so many different relationships. It does work on the other ways, but especially for men tend to keep their feelings close. They don't tend to share their feelings because if we share our feelings, it's a sign of weakness.
Weakness, yeah.
And it is not. I have been in the enlightened side now of sharing feelings because I read the Bible verse. The only one I can recite word for word is Jesus wept.
John 11:35.
I know you were going to say that. I knew it was somewhere in obviously the New Testament. So I concluded from my verse that I can repeat word for word, that if crying and expressing feelings is a sign of weakness, I must conclude that Jesus has a sign of weakness. And that just was incongruent. And I said, that is not true. My God on earth is powerful, sensitive, in touch with these feelings. He's balanced with these feelings. Never would I think it's a sign of weakness. He's demonstrating to me that is a sign of being a strong, healthy individual, and in my case, a healthy man, to come home and talk about this stuff. So the last thing we usually want to come home and do is talk, because there's study after studies that show men have a limit of how many words they want to speak. And they live with someone, stereotypically, who has a lot more words. And sometimes
are you talking
they're
about
coming
Tammy and
home to a spouse who has been around kids. Now, she may have a lot of words, but they're kid words. She has not had any adult conversation. So she's longing for an adult to communicate with and share her feelings with. And the first human adult that she encounters that day is her stressed out, already burnt out on his words husband.
Right.
So when I see Jesus, I'm going to ask him, why did we set that scenario up, Jesus? It seems to me this is setting up for a conflict. Yeah. And it does. So the half of this, again, is awareness. When you come in the door as typically in the male who's been out there stressed out, you're coming to a lady, the love of your life, who wants to express and talk and connect with you. So on the male side, you look at it and go, you could say, give me like 30 minutes to just decompress. Just let me have 30 minutes. You decompress and you come in, and you generally love language for women is one of those is quality time, not quantity. Doesn't mean a lot of time.
Right.
It just means the time you spend is very quality, which is sharing your feelings. So you come in and you go, I'm so worried about what's going on in the business. I am really just so sad. I had to lay off a person who's been so valuable to us, and it just hurts my heart. This is conversations that men don't have in the workplace, because like in my staff meeting, there's no way I could say to a captain, well, how do you feel about that? And a bunch of guys, I would love us to have that day when we could. But I know you, you look at me and going to go, what? You mean, I got the solution. Yeah, we just had to discipline this officer, and we feel bad about it, but he's not going to feel bad. This problem solved, Chief. Let's go on to the next one. We've got that problem solved. So coming home, it's a whole different dynamic, because women stereotypically share and problem solve differently. They want to hear it, and then all of a sudden they connect with you. This is how they get intimate with you, is that they understand how you feel, and you're going to understand how they feel. Typically, wife would say, well, no, Johnny's not doing well in school. He's got a D on his last exam. Go, here's what we do. Okay. You're going to go on parent, whatever it is, that thing. Okay. You're going to go on and you're going to monitor his grades. And then you're going to call that teacher, and you're going to get him and make sure she lets you know if he's not doing his homework, and I'm going to hire a tutor. Okay. Problem solved. I'm going to go watch the news. No, that problem is not solved, because his wife, or the other person he's living with, is in no place to problem solve. She knew how to problem solve. What she was looking for is emotional connection, when sitting down, looking across and saying, well, you've had a stressful day too. I bet you're worried about our son. She goes, oh my gosh, I am. He's struggling. Maybe he's got a learning disability. Oh my gosh, maybe he does. And you start to connect with her on these emotions. That's how you grow the relationship. But the enemy wants to get you so tired, so focused on the problem, and get you distracted, so that you don't share these feelings, so that you don't connect. And so you walk in and she does not feel connected to her husband. He's stressed out. Now, what men normally do is, when we're stressed, we go to anger. When we're worried, we go to anger. When we're heartbroken, we go to anger. When we're sad, we go to anger. So we end up being these happy, angry guys. So she's walking around on eggshells, because she doesn't want to set him off, because if she goes in and she goes, I know he's had a stressful day, he's going to be angry. I know he had to fire somebody or lay somebody off today. He's got a heartbreak, but he's going to be angry. No one wants to go talk to an angry guy. So then and then what she ends up learning is, if I want to connect and communicate with him, I can meet him right toe to toe on anger. Then we now have, years down the line, he comes in the door, he's stressed out, he gives her a dirty look, she stands up in his face, and the one way she gets her attention is she gets right in his face with anger, and we got a big fight. That's the genesis of it. And I think it just starts with us not understanding our thinking, not understanding our feelings, and not being vulnerable to share them. Another long answer to a short question.
And then I think, Gary, that's great. But I think the other thing is time and location. I think we got to understand the right timing and the right location.
Yes.
Like you said, maybe the first moment you walk in out of the door is not the time to take on, like big, heavy issues. And then the location, meaning maybe not right there with the children in the kitchen, right in the midst of a bunch of chaos. Maybe some code words with each other, like, hey, it's been one of those days. Hey, let's meet on the patio out on the patio, at 8:00 tonight. I'd love to debrief and talk about this stuff.
Excellent. That is very good. Yeah. And I don't know. I like clear, direct communication. I think code words are okay, but I much rather where you, like you just said, you come in and you go, I know you want to talk. I want to talk, but I'm so exhausted right now. let me go pray. Let me get my head collected. I just want to sit down and do nothing. And maybe 7:30 after we put the kids to bed, let's have a little time together and let's
Yeah.
talk. Let me just talk to you. So she now knows she's going to get this conversation. She's going to get you reflective. She's going to get
It's
you
not
in a
going to
better
be avoided.
place.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens if you start to have conversations and you lose it. What couples want to do is power through them, and you go and then men get angry. Then they get angry. So somebody says, okay, Ty, you need a break. So you take about 20, 30-minute break, and whoever calls it out calls it in. So I like the idea that the person who's stressed says, look, I even the wife could be, look, I got a whole lot of stuff going. I got to get the dinner done. I got to get this. And after dinner, we'll talk. I need to talk to you. So she's communicating that there's something going on and they need to talk. But I like to be able to say, too, is communicate that it's not about them, because whoever comes in and goes, look, I got a bad day. I don't want to talk. I'll talk to you about 8:00 tonight.
Yeah.
Or you walk in, she goes, don't even try. I don't want nothing to do with you right now. We'll talk after dinner. So we always will then conclude based on the nonverbal that, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And it may not, most of the time, it isn't that they're doing anything wrong. It's outside sources. But we immediately conclude, must be me. What did I do? And then you sit there going, the heck did I do? So a lot of times you just go, I just need a few minutes. I had a bad day at work. So let me just kind of debrief here. And so you've said bad day at work. I need to debrief. She knows, or she does the same. Communication. Did I say communication?
Communication. Well, Tammy and I've been married 39 years, and this December will be 40 years.
Yeah.
So,
wow. So proud.
I'm patting myself on the back.
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman.
Yes.
And, in that 40 years, I would say there's been 4 seasons where Tammy and I went to counseling. When we were first married, the first 3 or 4 years we were in counseling. Some things that happened in Tammy's life growing up that we needed to go to counseling for, once to help her, but also help me understand. And then later, when we were raising children, it's amazing how you kind of like, we went through counseling. It's like, wow, we're on the same page. Everything's good. And next thing you know, we had children and we needed help. Yeah. We needed a coach. We needed somebody, because Tammy and I was raised on what I would call parental coaching. That was kind of the behavior of my parents, how they related to me. Tammy's family, her parents were more like a concrete authority. And it was amazing how when we then tried to raise our children, how we both approached raising our children from 2 very different approaches. And, we needed somebody to help us navigate that. And so there's been different seasons. So what are some of the, indicators or behaviors or ways that you need somebody like Gary? You need somebody to help, because sometimes you don't know you need help. You're just like, I'm drowning.
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
So here's my sorrow about counseling. Many times, by the time they come in to see me, they are, it's like, if this doesn't work, we're getting a divorce. Or somebody's coming in and they're already out. And they're just coming in so they can check off a box and tell somebody, well, we did try counseling and it didn't work. So that's why I had to leave him or leave her. But I did try it. So I have always recommended that if you don't, you get a mentor, or you get somebody you can, somebody that's, been married longer, or just talk to your pastor or professional counseling when you start to feel a little disillusioned. It's better to hit this stuff early and teach better communication skills, and men understand these basics of men on their feelings and where to talk about it. And then also, so when you start to see that you're struggling with the chemicals or alcohol or with any of these things, are trying to take the edge off of your feelings. Big in business is you're so stressed And then you start taking, well, I'll just take a couple, shots of alcohol. It's not so much social, but it does take the edge off of it. And then this is where you start finding yourself in caught up in these addictive cycles, is that you've started self-medicating and using substances, gambling, food, all of these kind of things. Those are all kind of indicators that maybe I can use somebody that can help me figure out what I'm doing, and if I'm in a relationship, help me to communicate, because that's the number one thing I work on that couples don't like, is the way that the couple is that reflective listening.
Reflective listening. I actually know what that is, Gary.
Yeah. So reflective listening is just that, because
I love it.
Yeah, you do not. But you do it. It's kind of like taking medicine. You don't like the taste of it. You don't like it, but you know it's going to make you feel better, so you do it. So and it also helps you in your job. It helps you to, if you're a good, being a good listener as a leader in your job is so good, helping you to give direction to your subordinates. And if you come across with that servant heart that Jesus was about, you look at Jesus was always teaching Peter stuff.
Yeah, Peter.
He's going to leave the church to him. So, and he's got, in my opinion, Peter's a narcissist. He's all consumed with himself. He's all about himself. So, and people say, can God use me? And I go, you look in the Bible who God uses. Oh yeah, no, he's going to use you, because you're in no league with what Peter was about. Paul, who probably had an anger problem, these kind of things. And so you start, you all of this kind of bleeds in. But if you're a good listener, and your wife or your subordinates know that you hear them, and that you take that even under consideration, and your decisions are made in a cooperative manner or in their interest. For example, as a police department, I used to work for sergeants, and again, just like I did with therapists, I watched good leaders and I watched poor leaders. The leaders that no one really wanted to be on their shift or follow them were the guys that were micromanagers. They knew everything. They would make a decision. If something went bad, they would shirk their responsibility and pass it on to you. Right. Their decisions weren't made in your best interest. The decisions were made in their best interest, and not you at all. The sergeants and command staff and chiefs that I work for, when I saw them make a decision in the best interest of us, like I had sergeants would chew me out, that I'd screw up on something. And I remember one of the worst guy got in my face was I left my prisoner's money out on a table when we're booking him in. And I walked out momentarily, and that sergeant walked in, and he went ballistic on me. I knew this guy went ballistic because he didn't want me to get in trouble if that money turned up missing. He didn't want my career ended, and I knew his heart. So I didn't like it, but I took it a lot better than getting chewed out with somebody who is arrogant about themselves, promoting themselves, and they wouldn't ever listen to you. So these leadership things that you take from the workplace, you can take home and really just listen. And you're still the leader of the home. And if you're primarily working, like for me, I was primarily working with men. I couldn't go home and use those same kind of skills as with my wife and my family. It doesn't translate over. But I became more of a listener. I became more understanding how they are feeling. And my decisions were tried to be based on what was in their best interest. And that's trying to be a good leader at home and in the workplace. That translates across to your kids as well. You role model the behavior. So if you don't want your kids yelling, what do parents do? They're screaming and yelling. They go, "Don't you talk like that." And they're going, "Okay, don't talk like you're talking." Yeah. So these are just something you look at. You got to try to role model what you want your kids to do. And if your kids understand and you let them know learning early is that you will listen to them and you're got their best interest. When I, discipline my kids, I'd always, I'd give them a few minutes where I'd calm down and I'd come back in and then they're adults now, and they talk about, here we go. Okay, we know what you're going to do. You're going to come in and say, the reason you're doing this was that you want us to be good citizens.
Yeah.
But they had it, and they're doing it now to their own kids, but they kind of make a little fun of it. But I would come in, and then whatever discipline I'd give them, I tied it into consequences for your bad decisions. But they knew that I had their interest in heart, and that I was trying. It wasn't anger that was driving me. So I would take a time out so they don't see anger. Every once in a while, it would get away from me. And, like I remember I took my son's little cars away for like a month. And then I thought, oh, I took his cars away for a month. I over disciplined, but I didn't want to go back on it, because you say something, you got to hold to it. So I remember I got to be really careful. He was so crushed by those little cars. He's like 4 years old, and I took his cars away, and I look back, oh, that was so crushing. So every night I'd come home and I'd be playing with him. I'm just thinking, when can that month up? We got to get that done. And man, as soon as it was done, I gave him those cars back. And I thought, I'm not going to, I'm going to think before I discipline. Also, when you ground your kids, remember who else is getting grounded. You're grounded for 3 weekends. Well, you're not going anywhere either for 3 weekends.
Yeah. You're grounding yourself.
Yeah. So you just, you think about the consequences later on as you calm down. Work the same way. As a police chief, nobody walked in my office and goes, gosh, chief, are you having a good day?
Right.
They're walking in my office. There's a problem. Nobody come to see me unless there's a freaking problem. And and sometimes it was like I just go like, oh no. Then I'd say, come back in an hour. Come back in an hour. And for me, I'd pray about it. I'd think about it. Again, with all of how Jesus would probably try to do this stuff. And not, if I didn't have to fire off on a decision right away, I'd think about it. And then I would listen to the different perspectives of my staff, and then make a decision. And I have made a decision that I actually wanted to fire a guy. And after lengthy discussions with command, they convinced me that he was salvageable. And you know what? That officer turned out to be a really good guy. So he did. He made a mistake. He was in probation. And I just thought, well, if you did here, it's going to carry on. They go, no, they convinced me. We know him. He's an anomaly. So he got like some significant time off, and he came back strong. So it was. But go ahead.
But I think the thing is, we're talking about having people that you can speak into your life, either a pastor, a counselor, or a friend, or another business associate. If you wouldn't have had people that you allowed to speak into your life, you would have made a big mistake there.
Oh, no doubt. So I also want to caution that when you have a confidant, somebody you're going to be close to, same sex. What happens is oftentimes when you get these affairs or these relationships that are not appropriate, it's generally men and women, when they start sharing these feelings. Remember, this is a connection to intimacy.
Right.
So you don't want to have somebody go out to lunch with a female who's a friend. You go, oh, she's just a friend. They all start that way. You just have to be really careful. And so your confidants are either a couple together, or another guy or another female. And I want to caution that you be real careful with that. And if anybody's hearing this and you're saying to me now it's not going to happen to me, and we're really close, we're like brother and sister, and unless you are brother and sister, no.
You're not. Unless you are brother and sister, you're not.
No. So I would caution and encourage people to have a policy that their confidants, people that take in their confidence, unless it's a pastor in a pastoral setting, in an office, the church, your counselor, those kind of things. With the door open. Plus, and everybody's still got to be cautious. But going out to have coffee with somebody to discuss the business, the problems, and you have a female who's really got a lot of input, then bring another person. So there's 3 of you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So you either 2 women or I just
Very
had
good
I'm on board of directors for guide dogs, and we have the board is really outside the area, and we had one board member I needed to talk to about some touchy things, and I called her up. She says, "Well, let's meet in Banning for coffee so we can talk this over." And I go, "I got 2 problems here." I said, 2 problems. One is you're pretty well known. I'm pretty well known. We're now man and woman, and we're meeting outside our respective communities.
Right.
So if I'm the enemy, I'm making sure somebody walks by and goes,
Yes.
"What's Gendron doing talking to her?" That's all it starts. And then all of a sudden you got this stuff. You don't need that kind of stuff because
Right.
people are not going to look and say, well, they're just having a professional meeting. They're going to start thinking, oh, something's up. Especially, why are they meeting and banning? Anyway, she quickly understood. And then we set up and had another lady come, and there was 3 of us. So that's the kind of stuff. Look, because they're important that you have somebody to talk to. It's important that you have somebody you feel comfortable talking with, share this stuff, and they're going to pretty much keep it close to them. That's what you're looking for.
That's good. And I think, like we had on a few days ago, or not a few weeks ago, we had Phil Libator on, who is an accountant and tax accountant, really helps a lot of business people. And, everybody's so excited. Oh, share. Oh, you got tax problem. You need to talk to Phil. Oh, talk to Phil. Oh, talk to Phil. But if you're having challenges in your marriage, if you're having challenges even in your thinking, and you're driven by fear, there seems to be a stigma. Talk to Gary. Talk to a counselor, and that is so far off base, and it's sad.
The stigma's changing. The stigma's changing. Example is just in law enforcement. I was on the cusp of the Vietnam War. And they did away with the draft the year I was eligible. I thought I was going to have to go join the Navy or something. I was going to get drafted. So, but I came in behind the guys that had gone to Vietnam. They were the older guys, and they were the police officers in front of me. Most of those dudes never, ever talked about what they saw and what they did. And they ended up being some of these happy, angry guys. And they were some of the biggest womanizing, drinking kind of, not all of them now. Please don't. But there was some that you look at and you go, they've got such good things going. Why would these highly ethical, moral men do that? And that's because they were trying to deal with these feelings, because it was a bigger stigma than to go to a therapist and talk about it versus, well, I'll just go to the bar and have some drinks and yuck it up a little bit. That's how now, because we understand what PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, how that impacts first responders in our military, they're now mandating that you have got to see a professional. And they also, and in the military, my understanding is they have debriefings that are pretty intense, where you get a lot of stuff out on your combat missions to try to take some of this feeling stuff out, so it just doesn't turn and eat you up, and it's just not, and it becomes background noise. You're just always walking around on edge because you're thinking about all the stuff going on that you try to compartmentalize. Men are good at compartmentalizing. So
I
very
think
good to have somebody to talk to. And the stigma is changing. I'm getting, and even though on stigma too, I make it all about communication. Guys will come in more so because we'll emphasize communication, and then gradually do a little bit of therapy. But it's communication, especially with guys. And then they get in there. I'm giving the hook. I get them in there. Then we're going to communicate about feelings. And then they sit back in the chair thinking, oh man, I got fooled. Because they wanted to come in and talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me how to talk to my wife. And then you get them in there and says, oh yeah, it is about talking about your feelings with your wife.
Well, luckily I'm the kind of man that loves to talk about my feelings. So I wouldn't be afraid to come in and talk to you. So, hey, so, with all the pressures that are on businesses and, couples, I can't encourage enough. Have somebody you're talking to, like you said, a pastor, But a lot of times, other business owners, you're going to talk to them. They're in the same pressure you're under. So it's almost like two people who are drowning. Who's going to save who? And so sometimes you have to have somebody who can speak to you from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And I think that is the key here. Hey, we only got a few more minutes before we turn you loose. Thank you so much, Gary, for being willing to do this for us on this evening. But
this was more fun than I thought it was going to be. See, I thought more fun than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I'm glad I did it.
That's, you know what? And people say that to me all the time when they leave church. They're like, wow, this was way better than I thought it would be. Or this is, I thought the doors of the church would fall down when I came through, that kind of thing. So Gary, I'm so glad I got to help you.
It's about the thought. Okay.
I'm so glad I got to help you tonight.
Yes, you did. I feel better. Thank you. I got it all right.
So listen, there's a lot of people right now that are driven by fear, uncertainty. I can't tell you how many times business owners have said, I'm laying awake at night. I'm awake a lot in the night. I have pressures, and I'm paralyzed. That's another word that I hear from some business owners is I'm just paralyzed by making decisions because there doesn't seem to be a good decision, or I don't know what the outcome's going to be, or I built this business and my whole life has been poured into this and I could lose the whole thing. And so there's a lot of fear. What would you say to them? What's some of the thoughts that you would have for them?
Well, you don't have enough time for me to restructure those thinkings. But when you start back and if anybody can replay this, what you said is some of these things like I'm paralyzed. Well, if you're paralyzed, then I don't know, other than just being like in a lot of pain, paralyzed is not a good. You're not paralyzed. So I would challenge, you're not paralyzed. You are capable and still always have been capable and remain capable of making a decision. You're going to make a decision based on what you know. And then you're not going to wait 6 months from now and then beat yourself up and Monday morning quarterback the decision. Oh, the what if, I should have. I tell people, stop shoulding on yourself. There is no shoulds. You made the best decision at the time. You give yourself credit and you go forward with those decisions. Now, laying awake at night, what probably is happening is you're activating this fight or flight, which is what happens with stress and anxiety. So you're kind of kicking a little bit of adrenaline through you. And it's hard to sleep with adrenaline because adrenaline is giving you ideas to speed up your system so that you get oxygen to your muscles. So your red blood cells have got to get to the muscles quicker. So you've got to get more oxygen. Your breathing increases, your pulse rate increases. And then you get this, sometimes this feeling of being paralyzed is that you got so much adrenaline, its visual acuity starts to narrow and you get tense because you jacked yourself up with adrenaline. You take a breath and you start ruminating on other things besides what's not working. You ruminate on, I have Jesus. I've got the big question answered.
Right.
Really, when you look at it, the rest of this stuff is collateral. And if I make a decision and it doesn't go right, I'm smart enough, I'm quick enough, and I have the ability to adjust it again and again and again until I do get it right. One decision I find is probably unusual. One decision is going to put you on the street. If it is, okay, that's a pretty tough decision, but you're not going to be on the street. You're going to figure out a way. If you lose that business, you're going to find another one. There aren't too many successful business guys at the top that have gone and made decisions that were always correct. They all have a story where they made a bad call. It is always the measure of those business guys, what they did with the bad call. Did they give up, or did they get back in and go, okay, I blew that one. I didn't recognize that the market was going to go this way. It was a reasonable expectation that the market was staying. no one could predict the outcome of this virus. So I made some
Right.
decisions that was pre-virus. Now that I'm kind of some troubles, I make decisions understanding what the economy is looking like with the virus. And you don't get as paralyzed. You don't get as stressed out. Again, it's managed. And if instead you ruminate and say, all things said and done, I got Jesus walking with me. He's right here. And sometimes my visualization, my thinking is I'm walking around this road and I hit a big rut or I fall in the ditch and I look around and I just try to pull myself up out of the ditch. And I visualize Jesus standing there saying, take my hand. I want to pull you out of this thing. Just pull you right up here with me. And sometimes I get so prideful and I go, I'll do it myself. I can do this. I'll get out.
Yeah.
And you start clawing your way out of there. And I'm looking, might have been a lot easier to say, I'm going to hand this to you, Jesus, because I control nothing except my own behavior. I'll respond to what's on this road. What you put on this road, I will respond to it in a godly way because you're right here with me. And that helps you sleep a little better. That helps. You can't be paralyzed if you got Jesus with you. And that's what we go back to that. As a Christian therapist, we pray. That's what, I don't promote a faith. I take clients who are not Christians, and I have Jewish clients. I have people who come in and they'll see a Jesus book laying around. They go, we ain't talking about him. They go, I'm not going to promote that to you. No, I won't. I might try to plant a seed, but I'm not going to be pushing it. So you, on the other hand, you understand and know the key. And then when people come see you, it's all about Jesus. And you're showing them that this road is tough, but you have a God that's never, ever left you and is not going to. And that helps to quiet down that fight or flight system. You look at it and you go, I do. I really believe that God came in this experience because we screwed it up. He didn't have to come down here if it was a just world, but it's not always bad. And when it's good, I rejoice in it. And when some things are not really good on the road, I just look to Jesus and say, okay, here's some burdens. I got to hand it to you because this road's getting pretty steep. And he's always been there. He's always been there. Yeah.
Well, Gary, one thing I know about you're a praying man. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to pray a blessing over the business people of our church, business community, if you don't mind. And, but before you pray, is there anything that, as we've been talking, that you'd want to say to our business people, or you wish I would ask you? What's on your mind, and then pray.
And then pray after that?
Yeah.
Okay. What we didn't talk about, which I think is a really big key, is taking a rest. What I'm finding with these business guys, who especially running their own business, these guys are putting 60, 70, 80 hours a week into building their business. And I look and go, when's the last time you rested? And they go, well, when I go to sleep. No. When have you just...
And then you awake at night.
Yeah. And you wonder why you can't. Yeah. So business, I'm going to encourage. I mean, my understanding, God even rested on the seventh day.
Yeah, I did read that somewhere.
Yeah. See, I'm not a pastor. I listen to you guys, though. I listen. And if you go out and you put your foot on that accelerator and you don't take the foot off that accelerator, you'll eventually blow an engine. And you're not any good to your family or your business if you're making yourself sick. And I see that sometimes we run ourselves ragged. And I think that's another secondary attack of the enemy to keep us so busy. So if you got anything besides restructuring your thinking, improving your communication, take a rest. It's okay to rest. Just do something like that. Sometimes just sit there. Now, this is going to let you know if you got a problem. Try to sit down, set the timer for 15 minutes and just sit there and go like this and do nothing. You type A personalities, AAA personalities, you can sit there and go, oh, this is just stupid. I'm not doing this. They can't do it. So keep this in mind. You got to rest. So let me just close by saying that thank you for the opportunity, Pastor, to talk with you. Like I said, this is fun, this interchange that we've had. And so Jesus, the businessmen that are engaged here in this format, we're asking that you surround, protect them from the enemy who is going to try to get in their thought life and tell them that there's no win, that there's too much, it's overwhelming, they can't handle it, or they're just failures. Help them to see, Lord, that with you there is no failures. There's some setbacks, but you're always there with us. Holy Spirit, just fill their hearts so they know you're there and that you're going to get them through whatever obstacle it is so that they just feel your presence. And help them, Holy Spirit, to recognize that it's okay to rest and it's okay to share their feelings with someone really close to them. Keep them safe and continue to bless them. We ask this in your mighty name, Jesus. Jesus, amen.
Amen. Gary,
Okay.
we're so grateful for you. You've been a blessing to our church, and thank you so much for coming on. And the information is there on the screen, and I can't recommend enough that if you in any way were impacted by this tonight and hearing Gary, give him a call, and or he'll know who you should talk to.
Yes.
That has to do with another area. So thank you so much, Gary.
Thank
And
you.
I just want to encourage you, if you'd like prayer, you can text 760-404-0817, and our pastoral team will pray for you anytime. So thank you for joining us tonight for Champions in the Marketplace. We're here every Wednesday night at 6:30. So God bless. Thank you, Gary, and we'll
Thank you,
be
Pastor.
blessed.